I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side, I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. When you're not around, when you throw that to the side, I get those goosebumps every time, yeah. 713 through the 281, yeah, I'm riding. Why they on me? I'm flying, sipping low key. I'm sipping low key and honest, find a rider. I get those goosebumps every time you come around, yeah. You ease my mind, you make everything feel fine. Worry about those comments, I'm way too numb, yeah. It's way too dumb, yeah. I get those goosebumps every time I need the Heimlich, throw that to the side, I get those goosebumps every time.
Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us on this glorious Friday night. Well, it is in the northeast. I don't know what it's like in Leicester and in Galway at the moment, but it's absolutely
sweating.
So the ice cream man that just went past before, you wouldn't mind an ice cream with a
Bring him on. Hopefully he can visit the desert island that we're going to be on, Lisa. See from the chat. We'll get into that. I don't know where that chat's going.
I know. I'm intrigued already, but that bit's for a little bit later. We've got a few little topics first. Pete,
where did the ice cream man come from? Was it Daz or was it you?
It was me.
That's mine. It was me. I would have left. I would be gone. I'd be chasing after that ice cream truck.
Yeah. But anyone that's intrigued about what about, you'll find out in a few days. Okay, yeah. But just keep tuned. But anyway, thank you very much for joining us on a Friday night. I'm joined by Pete and Daz. Chris is over on his way to Budapest, possibly linking up with Zabozley's agent, have a bit of crack and stuff like that, persuade him on the Newcastle as well. But Daz, we've got some breaking news first, haven't you, about the fifth member of Loaded that you wanted to break, didn't you?
Yep, we do indeed. Yep, there's a breaking news side. News line. Well, yeah, Martin has left Loaded. You remember he left us before and he came back in, but yeah, he's decided to leave again, concentrate on family time and work being busy and stuff as well. So he's decided that we'll part ways and we'll move forward as a four. But we'd like to thank Martin for all his time and effort and ideas, and you know as well in the chat, a bit of humor, as he likes to say himself. He brings the comedy factor to the show, so we're going to miss that. And of course, sure, you never know, he might pop on again in the future. But yeah, sad to see Martin go, but. All the best, and he's going for the right reasons as well. He's concentrating on the right things.
Yeah, he'll definitely be missed. Obviously, I'm good close pals with Martin. I'm seeing him next week, so that's the little thing. He's coming over for Sam Fender to go with us next week, so it'll be a nice little send off. Obviously, get to see him properly before he goes. Another couple of announcements before we get into the content tonight. Okay, I want to give a shout out to someone. Obviously, it's been on the channel before numerous times. He's played local hero on the takeover night. Everyone knows Davey Craig. Now, at the moment, if you're on social media at the moment on Twitter, you will see Davey's plugging various different hand-drawn, pictures that he's done about the area and stuff. Obviously, he did the one with that Miggy Almiron regards the Carabao Cup final. But obviously, he's now done one for next week, and it's this one here. It's all about Sam Fender. The gig on the 9th of June next week. Now, obviously, what he's doing is actually auctioning this off for charity. People can put in bids for it, and obviously everything's going to the food bank. Everyone knows if you go to the home games or not. Davey does a lot of work every single home game and away from that as well for the food bank. So he has said, if you see the details he's put down here for it, it's Hilly the Pooh, Sam Fender, and it's actually signed by Alan Shearer as well. Give him a DM for details on it. It's £5 each. For each raffle number, and obviously there's 100 tickets that he's aiming to get sold. If it's they get 100 sold, the draw will take place on the 9th of June at 8 p.m. A fitting date, obviously the date of the gig, but also 9th of June synonymous in Newcastle culture with obviously the Blade and races. But obviously, if they are sold actually before the 9th of June, extra money can be sold afterwards for the food bank as well. So if anybody's interested in buying a raffle ticket for the Hinny the Pooh Sam Fender pick, hit up Davey. He'll tell you how you can send a link over by PayPal to get that. Obviously, fantastic cause. So go and have a look at that if you're interested. But also, it's nice to give a little shout out to our fans occasionally as well. We got a really nice video sent to us. I believe it was with Daz and with Pete when Sean was up the other day. So we wanted to give it a shout out to our youngest follower. Evening, Freddie.
Point, Sean, to remind people, make sure you hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Get subscribed, because we've got a lot of content coming in the summer, so you're not going to want to miss that. Whatever.
Nearly 300 in the chat right now. Click that like button, click the subscribe. More importantly, get the questions in for Sean, because he's had tonight, and I can see them already flying through. So we're going to have
Freddie loves it. He loves loaded.
Freddie, great. Definitely a great age as well. Very, very great on that one.
Great, agree.
But look, just a little shout out. Obviously, it's really nice to see that families, young and old, obviously come together. The next generation coming through, and you never know, might get that stage where Freddie's on with one of our kids doing loaded mag NUFC if we're still going in 20 years' time. You never know. But look, let's get down to the crux of it. What we decided to do for a show tonight is basically let's get into the nitty gritty of obviously long season. We qualified for the Champions League for the first time in 20 years. Now, obviously, we don't know who we're going to be playing yet. It's all speculation and stuff like that. But what we wanted to do is we wanted to just look at, what potentially could be coming our way in September. So I've got this little image here of teams that have actually been confirmed into the draw for next season, but also potential ones. So just to highlight what's going on here, all the teams in bold are confirmed participants in the Champions League next year. The teams in italics, they are teams who have to go through the qualifying stages and stuff like that, but have got the highest UEFA coefficient rating. So if everybody qualifies at obviously the highest, this is what the teams will be like, and this is what the pots will be like. So as you can see, Newcastle are placed in pot 4 because obviously we've been out of European competition for that long. Our coefficient ratings has dropped drastically. It used to be quite high, so we could have been in a pot 2 or pot 3, but obviously under the Mike Ashley era, we can pretty much forget about having anything to do with Europe, apart from that nice little stint around the, when we came 5th with Alan Pardew. But looking at that, Daz, where do you look at those pots, and what's your first thoughts when you see the confirmed teams to start with?
Well, immediately my first reaction is, without even thinking about things, is what's their best chance to get out of the group to go? Because when you're in it, a bit like Roy Keane, when you're in it, you want to try and win it, but that's a bit unrealistic. Let's say it's just damn glad we qualified in the first place. But I'd be looking at what's the best I can pick, and I might be ruining things here, Richie, but I'd go for Fine Art out of pot 1. So who I'd want to drop out, and pot 2. I can see.
Do you know what? You're looking at pot 2. And the reason why you struggle is because it's debatable that pot 2 is potentially harder than pot 1. But what I'll do, Daz, keep your suggestions to yourselves. I know you've already hinted that you might be rude. So, Pete, you see those pots. What's your thoughts on the competition ahead for next season?
My first thought is bring it on. Bring it all on. I'm just looking forward to having Newcastle being in the biggest cup competition in the world. That's for sure. Look, we talked about teams that we would like to have, all the rest of it in terms of the glamour ties. But there's certain other teams that I would love to pick up in the group as well. I'm looking at Rangers and Celtic. Like I would love to have one of those in the group. Obviously, we know we can't have both. As well
we
as
wouldn't be able to take Celtic to start with in the
sorry,
same pot. So
but Rangers, okay. Let's go with Rangers.
Yeah, bring them on.
Porto, because Portugal is always a nice place to go. You know, a team that we are capable of beating, but everyone loves a trip to Portugal. I wouldn't mind that mid-season. It would be a nice one. Benfica, we've already played. Feyenoord, we've already played. PSG for me. Come on, PSG.
plenty of different options, but it's interesting you bring up Rangers, Pete, because we could have a dress rehearsal in pre-season, because obviously we go to Ibrox in pre-season, so that's going to be interesting to watch and see how it goes. How obviously see how Eddie Howe plays it with squads and stuff like that. But as we said, pot 1 and pot 2. Pot 2 could arguably be the harder group, because if you look, you've got Real Madrid in there, because obviously they didn't win the league. It's really, really odd. You've got Atletico Madrid, Inter Milan, who've got Champions League finalists this year. You know, let's forget about Man United and Arsenal, because we can't play them in the Champions League at the moment anyway. Same with Man City in pot 1. So that I was just looking at pot 2, though. Obviously, when I've looked at the research for it, we've got a 66% chance of going to Germany or Spain. So where would you prefer to go? Would you prefer to go to Madrid, or would you prefer to go to Dortmund or Leipzig, Daz?
I prefer to go to Germany. Myself, I've never been to Germany. I've been to Spain loads of times. But yeah, you're talking about the teams. I'd fancy our chance. I wouldn't fancy your chance. I'd prefer to go to Leipzig, especially if we can borrow a few of their players in the summer transfer window and then weaken them a bit.
Pete, would you fancy Germany or Italy? Sorry, Spain. Sorry.
I'd love us to go to the yellow wall, Dortmund. I'd love to see the yellow wall. To be in that stadium. Lowell, who you guys have met when we were up in Newcastle, he spent one of my best mates in the world. Lives in Germany. His brother Ben, and they've been to a number of games over in Germany, and I'd love to go over there and experience that for sure. Would Dortmund be the tougher team at the two? Probably, particularly if they're going to strengthen with the Bellingham money in the summer. But who cares? You just want those atmospheres. You want those big nights, those big Champions League nights. I think it's going to be tough, because you've seen people in the chat and they're going, I think one or two, Michael Palmer might have asked the question, do you want all the big ties, or do you want an easy route through to the next round? It's a tough one. You kind of want a bit of both. You want a big glamorous tie, and although Dortmund might not be seen as the upper echelons of European football, they kind of give you a bit of both. It's a winnable game, but they've got the atmosphere and the aura around them to make them feel like a big one. Like, I don't know whether you guys agree with that.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that Michael Poole was put those. It's as though he's actually looked at the screen and what I've got coming up for us to discuss. It's that intriguing. But what I decided to do is I've put together 3 groups. One which is the hardest group if we were to go by UEFA coefficient. One which is the easiest by UEFA coefficient. But then what I've done is this is where it all changes for all 3 of us. And obviously anyone in the chat as well, you get your suggestions as well. Where would you like to go now? We always say that you've never seen the Maccabi in Milan. We've beaten Milan. We've beaten Feyenoord. We've beaten Barcelona. But on the list, where would you like to go? So I'll quickly put up the groups again. Pick out your 3 locations from each of those and get them stuck in the chat. So obviously we can discuss that when we get around to it. So you've got plenty of fantastic places that you might want to go and visit. But look, have a look and then get your comments in the chat there. So, as I mentioned, the hardest UEFA coefficient draw, boys. Who do you think is the hardest team that we could technically face from pot 1?
Well, I've seen this already. You showed me before the show.
Did you remember, Pete, or not?
No, I don't.
No,
I don't remember.
It is Bayern Munich, Real Madrid in pot 2, Shakhtar Donetsk if you were pot 3 as well. Pete, obviously, Daz has seen that. Pete, what do you make of that? If that was the group you were given, would you think it's a group of death going off the coefficients, or do you think there's possibilities there?
Yeah, I mean, like the first two are very, very tough. I wouldn't say it was the group of death. Shakhtar Donetsk are a winnable game, like for me. And the one thing I might have said on a previous show is that you know, obviously we want to get through into the last stages of the Champions League, of course, but the least we want to be finishing is third, and I would be confident that we could finish third in that group. I genuinely do, and I think we could beat Shakhtar Donetsk home and away, and then it would just be about of whether we could pick up points from Bayern or Real Madrid, which you could throw that up in the air. Anything's possible. So whether it's the group of death, not quite, very close, but maybe not quite. Just because Shakhtar Donetsk are definitely a winnable one.
It also depends on where Shakhtar Donetsk are actually playing as well, because obviously we don't understand how it worked out with obviously the situation in Ukraine at the moment, where they're actually are they still playing in Ukraine, or have they moved to Poland? I don't know what happened this year, but obviously I don't know if anyone can actually let us know in chat. Daz, what would you make if that was our group on UEFA coefficients being the hardest rating potentially?
I think we finished third in that group. We did qualify for the Europa League, wouldn't we? And we'd give a right old go on that, and it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either. So yeah, I think Real Madrid and Bayern Munich would be too strong for us. Yeah, so far, give us a couple of seasons. Getting into the Champions League, or just getting close to making it, and we'll keep building, and we'll be able to tackle them. But I think it'll be a step too far.
Yeah, but let's hope we don't get potentially the hardest draw on the coefficient rate. How about we discuss what the potentially the easiest coefficient draw could be? And you look at this and you think, wow, we could do good with this draw. So we're looking at, as you know, Daz and Peter have already mentioned, Feyenoord as the winners of the Dutch league, Porto from pot 2. I'll say the old-fashioned name. It's Red Star Belgrade. Everyone knows who they are. It's a lot easier to spell out than Cavania Zavenza. But so we'll go Red Star Belgrade. Daz, I'll come to you first. If that was the draw that Newcastle were given, what do you fancy your chances to be?
Well, with it being our first time back in the Champions League for a long time, Richie, we're topping the group. We're going all the way. We're going to the final in Wembley, and we're winning the whole goddamn thing.
I like your optimism. Why not? No, actually, no. I think it's a group that you could possibly look at and think, do you know what you could get out of that group? Would you be the same thoughts of that, Pete?
I have my reservations about this group.
Really?
I do, because although on paper, like you said, Cravenia, Zvezda or Red Star Belgrade is what we know them as. That's never been an easy tie to go to. It hasn't ever away from home. At home, St. James's Park, of course, we expect 3 points, but some of those teams away from home are never quite easy. And when you've got a group like that, every team's going to be confident because they've missed out the big boys of Champions League football. So everyone has that area of confidence. And this is why there has to be a sort of balance there. We have to get a big name. And the reason why is because in Champions League, year upon year, it happens all the time, is that you get these big teams that see a team like Red Star Belgrade or a Porto or a Feyenoord or a Newcastle that are new to Champions League after 20 years and think, yeah, easy 3 points. And they come to us with an air of overconfidence. And then they experience St. James's Park and they go, shit, this isn't as easy as I thought. And you want that element of that because you want the element of surprise, because a lot of these players that are coming to St. James's Park probably have never played here before. So they see it on TV. They don't know what it's like in real life. And when you amplify what we've experienced this season and you amplify that by 10 or 20 for Champions League football, it means something different. And you want our players to be bang up for it. Don't you know our players are going to rise to the occasion against the Real Madrid, against the Dortmund, against the Bayern Munich. You know we're going to rise to the occasion, and the fans are going to, you know, I could talk about this all day, but what I'm saying to you is that you want a balance there. When you've got a group that looks as easy as that on paper, it affects players' mentalities. Joe Linton isn't buzzing off his absolute mind on the fact of playing Champions League football to go to Red Star Belgrade. Let's be honest with that. He is buzzing because he wants to play the world's best. He wants to put himself against the world's best. And that elevates players to another level when they're playing against the world's best. So we have to find a balance of some sort. So, like, I don't want to pour cold water on that group that looks easy and it would give us a great route forward, but I think it has to be a little bit of both.
I've got to say, you know, we say Red Star Belgrade, that'll be some hostile place to go. Those fans are right up for it. We saw when we went to Partizan Belgrade back in the Champions League qualifiers when, you know, Alan Shearer was there and stuff like that. They were hostile times. Obviously, they knocked us out of the qualifier in 1 year. And obviously, we got dropped out of the UEFA Cup at the time. So, you know, we know what the Serbian fans are like. If they're all like Alexander Mitrovic, then we're all screwed, basically, aren't we? But look, to be fair, you know, you look at pot 4. No one's going to want us from pot 4. That's you look at that there. There's a couple of dodgy teams that, you know, if you're looking down, you wouldn't want Newcastle, and you probably wouldn't really want Sociedad. Probably the 2 out of pot 4 that if you're looking there, you'd want to avoid them too. And I think that's great news for us, because obviously we're unexpected like commodity this year. Do you think people won't be looking towards Newcastle to be in their group, Daz?
No, they're no one wants to see Newcastle. Pete kind of outlined their St James's Park rocking on a European night, that Champions League music playing. I can press that now. But yeah, no, they're not going to want to come to Newcastle. And while I'm here, I must remind people to hit that like button, and if you're new, hit the subscribe button as well. But hit that like button while you're at it.
We're nearly 400 away. Nearly close to 400 away to 6K. Let's try and get us there.
Oh, wow.
Brilliant. As I said, just give a like, the subscribe. It's free. You know, you get to notify all of the content that we put on at the moment on a daily basis, isn't it, lads? So
yeah, it's more coming.
There you go.
Feels like it for us.
Yeah. It is, yeah. Anyway, right, look, that's the hardest, the easiest coefficient draw. Now, I asked the question at the start of the show. Where would your favourite ties be? If you could pick any teams out of that pot, where would that go? So, what I did, for example, I've put mine here, and I'll give you the reasons why. My favourite draw would be this. I would like to go, I just think the PSG, you know, you've got the Mbappes there, obviously, the stars of the lineup. It's the oil-based derby in the Champions League, isn't it? There'll be hype about it, but obviously between Qatar and Saudi and stuff like that, it's just got this immense fixture all about it. Then you've got Dortmund. The fans are fantastic. You know, the black, yellow wall at the, was it the Aduna Park? It's just absolutely immense ground to go to. And then you've got AC Milan in Portugal. And obviously, we like the trip to Milan. We've been there before. We've done it. Let's go back again and see the San Siro, because this could be one of the last times, you know, you get to go to the San Siro, because obviously it's an older stadium now and stuff like that. But Pete, I'll come to you first on this one. Is that a similar sort of group to what you might want, or is there a couple of changes? And also, could that be a potential group of death?
That's a group of death. That's a proper group of death. That is. Flipping hell. Yeah. It looks like a no way out type of group. That, but yeah. Look, you know for a fact that if we got PSG, yeah, everyone will be having a field day. All the journalists would be having a field day. Miguel Delaney would be writing stories out of his ears off the back of that. You know for a fact, steam coming out of his ears writing those stories about PSG at Newcastle and Qatari against Saudi. It's what everybody wants. Honestly, like every person in the media wants that draw. And it wouldn't surprise me if it happens. Genuinely, PSG against Newcastle, Qatari against Saudi. It is the story of the Champions League, certainly for the group stages. You throw AC Milan in there, you don't know what to expect from AC Milan. They could be amazing and do what they did this season and get to the last stages. Or they could be really, really poor and miss out. You just don't know. And I think, was it the Dortmund, the other team?
Look, I picked Dortmund, yeah. But then obviously the team that pot two are there for you to choose. You can have it might be something that you fancy better. But obviously, if you've picked Milan for the third one, you wouldn't be able to pick them in pot two. Do you know what I mean? So it's
So you got you've talked about it before. We talked about Porto, Atletico Madrid. What are they going to be like on the Simeone? New stadium, Simeone's defensive-minded team. I don't know. I don't know.
I'll tell you what, Pete. I'll rephrase it. Obviously, you picked PSG. Obviously, we know why you've picked PSG. Yeah. Obviously, the love it. Obviously, you and Lee, you've both got for PSG. Obviously, the talk about it. Obviously, you've mentioned it. If I had to say to you, you could have any of those teams. That would be you've got a ticket for that game. Where would you want to go?
If I know I've got a ticket for the game, okay, PSG for sure. If I'm going pot two, and I know I've got a ticket, I would say RB Leipzig. I'd just love to go there and watch a game. I really would. So we've got France, Germany, pot three. Ooh, you will not see me dead in Shakhtar. That's what I'm saying. I would probably, you know what? Yeah, I'd probably say AC Milan.
Yeah, I looked at it. I was torn between Milan and Rome for Lazio. Because obviously Rome is a city, it's a nice place to go and stuff. But
not for 10 days, it's not. Trust me.
I'm trying to avoid teams we've already played over the years. So one or two people are putting there like the likes of Barca and Feyenoord and places like that. We've played those teams. We played Barca twice, in fact.
Yeah, that was my thinking as well, Pete. I wanted variation from what we've had before.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I mean, obviously we played against Inter Milan the last time, but we didn't play against AC Milan. So yeah, that would probably be me. PSG, Leipzig, AC Milan.
Okay. Daz, obviously my favourite, as I said, was PSG, Dortmund, AC Milan, and obviously us. Would yours be similar to that? And also the other part of the question, could that potentially be a group of death as well?
That could be a group of death, yes, for sure. But yeah, okay. If I'm picking, what do I want? I want Barca out of pot one. Just the sentimental value of Barca, my Spanish team, let's say.
Mind you, you potentially wouldn't be going to the new camp because obviously they're closing it for next season to do renovations. So they wouldn't get to go to Barca. They wouldn't get to go to the new camp.
Where are they going to play it? In this Espanyol Stadium down the road?
I mean, it'd probably end up being that they've got like a training ground for the B team, haven't they? It's like a smaller stadium sort of thing, or they might reduce the size of the new ground. Or they are doing renovations.
Yeah, they're not there. Yeah, as you said, they're not there next season. So yeah, it's right next door. It's right next door.
Yeah,
it's not the same. Real Madrid did something similar under lockdown, and it was poor.
Do you know what that means? A lot of teams could fancy going to Barcelona because they would be intimidated by the venue.
Yeah, there were a lot of teams that weren't intimidated when Real Madrid played at their kind of training ground. But so that's you were going to say something. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh no, yeah, no. I was just going to say that I've been to the new camp. There's no match on, just the tour and the holiday, and I've been to Real Madrid Stadium as well, roundabout. But yeah, no match on, of course, either. But no, I'm going to say Barcelona still. I'm going to say Leipzig, because I want them to experience St James's Park, some of their players, up and coming players, and then might be able to tempt them there. So that's why I'm going to pick them. Pot 3, I'm going to go for either Braga or Rangers. Just because it's one who I think we could win, and yeah, sure, that's us in pot 4, obviously. So yeah, that'll do.
So plenty of options there. And do you know what? To be fair, lads, we're happy just to be in there, aren't we? Really, realistically. So, but let's put that little devil's advocate in there, okay? Like I know what Daz mentioned at the very start of the show. Yeah, we're going to have a fantastic. We're going to go on and win it and stuff like that. What do you actually think's a realistic possibility or a realistic minimum to actually go from your first Champions League back in, first season back in the Champions League? Sorry, Pete.
What's realistic?
What's realistic, and what would you say is a bare minimum?
A bare minimum for Newcastle is third in the group. Like we have to continue to play European football regardless. That for me is a bare minimum, and I think the manager and the ownership will be saying the same. Is that if we're going into European season, it's don't finish fourth. Don't finish fourth. You finish third, you go into Europa League. Hey, what's happened there?
It must have gone down.
Yeah. That will be the objective. Don't finish fourth because you're out of Europe altogether. You finish third, you go into Europa League. And honestly, I don't care who's already in Europa League, Liverpool, whatever. Yeah, Marco probably said I upset him. I don't know why I upset him. What? Because I said finish third. I'm joking. But I'll be saying, I'd be confident in us attacking the Europa League. However, finishing in the top 2 and getting into the latter stages, anything's possible. Rich, honestly, Richie, anything is possible. We've seen it before. I was chatting to a couple of Leicester fans about this before the end of the season, and I was kind of talking to them about, because they were one of the only teams that have got Champions League football and then actually went on to get into the latter stages and get into the quarterfinals in their first and only season in the Champions League. Like they just kind of carried that wave on. Now we didn't win the league, of course we didn't, but we've been amazing this season. Can we carry that wave on into the Champions League season? And can we carry that wave on and get into the latter stages? Whether that's round of 16, whether that's quarterfinal, semis and beyond, who knows? But we cannot finish fourth in the league. That is the priority. Third and above. I don't know what you guys think of that.
That I 100% agree with Daz. What would you make of that? What do you think the realistic and the minimum expectations are for this season in the Champions League?
This season, okay. Sorry, I dropped out there. My connection died. But sorry, your question is where do I think we'll finish in?
What would you say is the minimum requirement, and also where do you think we can realistically finish? So it's like a 2-part question.
All depends on the draw, really, Richie. I wouldn't be getting that far ahead. I know you're playing out scenarios there, but the draw has to happen first, and then see where we are, see how we're playing as well. Then when the Champions League starts, I could give that kind of an answer. It's way too early, because I think finishing third in a group is doing really, really well. That should be our target, and to try and get if we're to drop out of the Champions League to get into the Europa League and then see what we can do in that. But it's going to be difficult trying to manage on all fronts, and both domestic and European. It's something we're not going to be used to. Eddie Howe isn't used to it either, so it's going to be a learning curve for everybody. And we're going to have to bring in a few players, and they have to gel. So it's going to be a year of learning, I think. If the whatever bonuses we can take from it, all the better.
Yeah, great point that you just brought up there, Daz. About it's obviously it's going to be a learning season because obviously it's a lot of firsts for a lot of players on there. So obviously you've got like Trippier in there, you've got Bruno who's experienced European football. Same with Sven Botman, but there's a lot of players in that squad who've never experienced European football, let alone Champions League football. So it's a learning curve. But obviously we've all pretty much said that third a minimum sort of thing. So is there any teams? Obviously we mentioned the Red Star Belgrade has been a hostile place to go. Is there any of those other teams in pot 3 that you wouldn't fancy us coming above?
Coming to playing against?
Yeah, so say for example, we've just all said pretty much we think third would be a good season if we would have finished third in the group and continue into the Europa League if obviously after the new year. Is there any teams in there that you would think would be a serious doubt if they were in our group that we couldn't finish third in the group?
Oh, okay, right.
Just 2 for me. The 2 Italian teams, AC and Lazio. And even Lazio is kind of like are we capable of finishing above them? We are. Of course we are. All the other teams, I think we're more than capable. And you know what? Yano, welcome Yano back to the chat, actually. We're not seeing him in a while. He's great to see him in the chat. Hope you're well, fella. But he said, but he put on the chat in a comment, if we are finishing 4th, then we've had a nightmare transfer window. And he makes a really, really good point because we're talking about Newcastle United with our current team right now. We're not talking about a Newcastle United at the end of the transfer window. Whatever's going to happen, and there's a lot of questions popping up right now with regards to transfers and various other topics that we will cover later on in the show. But what I will say is that you look at those group of teams in pot 3, and you think Lazio, AC Milan, okay, difficult teams. All the rest of them, beatable. That's me, in my opinion.
Daz, are you on the similar thoughts to Pete, or was there anybody else that you potentially wary of in pot 3?
Yeah, Lazio, I don't know what they're about these days. They've SMS, of course, but he could even end up with us yet. No, I think we could on the day we can beat anyone in that pot 3. But it's how we're coping, like with their own league domestically and trying to combine it with Europe. It's going to be difficult, but we have no one to fear in pot 3. No.
It's safe to say whatever happens at the end of August when the draw's made, it's going to be exciting times for Newcastle. And then obviously you'll see all over social media where people are planning the trips to and stuff. It's going to be a fantastic experience for the first. Sometimes for some Newcastle fans, the first time they get their experience European away days full stop. It's going to be such a spectacle when we actually get around it. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. Just while we're on the Champions League topic, before we've changed topic slightly before we get the questions, there's been a big debate about obviously the homegrown players that you've got to have in the squad for the Champions League, but you've also got to have at least 4 players that have come through the academy at Newcastle. So at the moment, obviously, you look at the ones who've come through. You've obviously got Sean Longstaff. You've got Elliot Anderson, Mark Gillespie, Paul Dummett, Matty Longstaff, still because technically he's still got a contract until the summer, and obviously you've got the youngster Lewis Murray who's just broke through the team. Now, obviously, there's a potential that is there some of them still going to be there for next season or anything like that? But there's been a lot of talk about these 2 people potentially, being drawn back to the club. Pete, I'll come to you first before we'll get your opinion on both the players. But they've got 12 months left on their contract currently where they are at the moment. That's Fraser Forster at Spurs. Obviously, it's a very, very young Fraser Forster at Spurs with Newcastle there. But also Tim Krul, who's got 12 months on his contract at Norwich. Both 35 years old. Now, we'll probably look at this, that they're not going to be the starting goalkeeper. they are probably going to come and sit along either number 2 or 3 on the bench sort of thing. Pete, do you think either of those are a viable move? And is it something you could possibly want to pursue as well?
I think both of them are 100% a viable move. I genuinely do, because it hits the quota quite easily for a 25-man Champions League squad. They're not going to play every week, out or at all, but they'll hit that quota as well. And both players love the club. If I'm looking at an option that would be more likely to happen, it would probably be Tim Krul, because I just think that Fraser Foster has an opportunity to play elsewhere as a number 1 goalkeeper, whether it's for a few more seasons. Tim Krul's kind of gone down the leagues and then built himself back up, and obviously he was with Norwich and he went down again. He's probably at the stage where he might well be happy with playing third choice. Fraser Forster had a good spell at Tottenham with Hugo Lloris being out, and speaking to a couple of Tottenham fans, they were actually pleased with what he did when he came in for Hugo Lloris. Hugo Lloris was shocking last season. Yeah. And actually Fraser Foster was good when he came in. So for me, I would probably prefer him ahead of Tim Krul. But you asked me which one's more likely, I would say Tim Krul, because Fraser Foster will probably get an option of a first team call-up for another club somewhere. But will Fraser Foster want to come home? It is his home. Would he want to come home and come north and be around family and be close to family and friends and be a part of this Champions League journey and dream and be a part of it for a few years of where Newcastle United is going to be from where he was last with us, where he had a really bad time. I think it was Leeds away. It was that their fight out between Krul and Forster for first team football. I think Forster had a really bad game against Leeds in a pre-season friendly where he conceded a couple of bad goals and he was shipped out off the back of that. And does he want to kind of right those wrongs and come back to the club and be seen as a positive? I don't know. If you're asking me who's more likely, Tim Krul. If you're asking me who I would want out of the two, Fraser Foster.
Yeah,
that's me.
Daz,
what's your thoughts on the two?
Yeah, so Tim Krul, I think I could have been there for his debut, or close to the time of his debut, anyway, because he played in the game against Palermo. But I think Tim Krul his days are numbered as a player now. He just so anytime I've seen him, it's mistakes I've seen. Fraser Foster, I agree with Pete. He did well for Spurs in the last few games. Of course, Hugo Lloris was retired after the game against us, and there's now this talk of him going to Nice. So
Nice.
Yeah, Nice. I saw that somewhere today, and then he's also said that they've got two keepers already. Like that's Michael's there. Yes. So he's not going to get a game there either. So yeah, you might as well retire Hugo Lloris, but go into media or something like that. But yeah, there's a gap in loaded if you want to join us. Don't drop the ball. Don't drop the ball.
He's singing Newcastle connections after this season at St James, isn't he?
He wouldn't get in, Daz.
No, he'd be handy. He'd be handy for the away days, European shows. He speak a bit of French, Pete. See, that's what
so
I'm
does
thinking.
Lee. We're good. We're good. Back of the line.
Okay, we need someone else. Right. Yeah. So I go for of the two, and if we have to bring in one to make up numbers, I pick Fraser Foster as well.
Do you know what? I think this is one which could potentially go down to late in the window, because obviously there's a lot of talk on Dubravka. Obviously we know Eddie Howe wants him to stay, but does he want to move away for first team football? Obviously, we saw he jumped at the chance to go and warm the bench at Man United, which was probably one of the most bizarre situations last year. You've also got the fact that Eddie Howe's mentioned he wants to keep Loris Karius as well. And there's been tentative talks about increasing that, but we know that his wife's back over in Italy, pregnant and stuff. So is that one harder to do? So it's, if you're keeping Dubravka or Karius, is the logical move would be probably to bring Tim Krul back. Bear in mind, his wife's from Bedlington, so obviously they become a home as such on that sort of front. And he's sitting on the bench at Norwich now. Come to Newcastle, experience Champions League football again, and sit on the bench, which he's doing at Norwich. You know what I mean? That's a fantastic shout for that. But obviously, if your number 2 goes, I think that's where you would then have to go persuade Fraser Forster, because he's done well as a number 1 at Spurs when he came in after Lloris, and he would probably be happy to sit behind Pope as well at his hometown club. That's probably one of the only teams he would be prepared to do it. But going back to before I bring you in, Pete, people were saying about Tim Krul being out of it and stuff. Would you prefer Tim Krul as your third choice keeper or Mark Gillespie? I'll just put that like that. Pete?
I'm sorry. I like Mark Gillespie for what he does in the away ends, but yeah, if I'm asking for a third choice goalkeeper, it's not even a question. Tim Krul all day long. And the only thing I wanted to add to that is that Callum makes a great point, and he just sorry to steal the chat off you for a second, Daz. I apologize. It just came up. Whose wife is a Geordie as well. She might want to move home. Yeah, did you say it? Sorry.
She's from Bedlington.
Apologies. That was a really good point. But Yana also mentions, to answer the question, both for an upgrade on Gillespie as third choice. Would like a second choice keeper who can challenge Pope. That's going to be a really hard one. Who's the second goalkeeper that pushes Nick Pope? That's the hardest part if we're going to be able to be in that position, because I genuinely believe, and I don't know what you guys think, but whoever comes in out of those two, if they do, I genuinely believe are third choices. I don't believe either one of them are going to be second choices. So it begs the question: who's going to be second choice? Is Dubravka going to say are we going to get someone else in? Are we going to make 2 goalkeeper additions? Who knows? It's a really tough one, but I don't know what you guys think about that.
I think one thing we're let's throw someone else into the equation here. In our charity game, there was an unbelievable keeper on display on the day, and if Newcastle Fans TV can give us the name of that keeper, let us know who he is. Sorry, Richie. No, I mean you, Richie.
Richie, don't take that. He's done you. He's done.
Reel him in there. Reel him in.
I played a game with freaking. How many people can tell me they've played a full, a full game with a dud? Well, fucked up knee. There's not many to me.
No, Richie, it's true. You are unbelievable. I think if Newcastle, if the scouts had been there, they would have been checking you out. They would have been checking out that knee. Could you pass the medical? That's the only thing.
No, Adam too short for a start, so I probably wouldn't have passed on that one either. Look, lads. Just while we're having a bit of a carry on, just a reminder to like and subscribe to the channel. We mentioned it helps us get us the algorithms for Newcastle content out there. It's free of charge to subscribe as well. You get a reminder every time we put some new content out. So there's a lot dropping off over the next few days. Plus, there's loads of content coming over the next weeks and months. With obviously all fixtures getting put out. Next week you've got the kit launch as well. Champions League draws. There's just loads coming up in this, and then of course the transfer window opens on the 14th. So there's loads to discuss. So just remember, like all the videos, really helps us out, and subscribe for free. You'll get a notification every time you come on. Right, before we get the questions, we'll just get a little talking point. And to be fair, it has to be a little talking point because we don't really know much about it. But today, Fabrizio Romano broke the news that Newcastle were agreeing a deal for Yankuba Minte from Adense. Now, he's an 18-year-old from Gambia. Normally plays on the right-hand side. This is obviously, he hasn't really played much this year. It's his first time in the first team this season. So you can see there he started 15 games, 4 goals. He also got 4 assists as well. So 8 goal contributions on that. And I believe it's about 6 million euros. Is that right, Pete? I think it was. But what's your initial thoughts on that? I know those are up and down thoughts, positive and negative, from some of the fan base online today. But what's your initial thoughts on this deal?
I'll be honest, I don't see how there could be a negative thought about the deal. It's a positive deal. It might not be the player that you want. Like, we've been linked with so many players over the recent weeks, and to hear that this deal was close might be not what you want, but actually, if you look at this deal in isolation, it shows you where we're going as a club. This, I tweeted out earlier on today, this had Dan Ashworth's fingerprints all over it. You look at what Brighton have been able to produce with their young players and been able to bring through in recent years. This is the blueprint. This is what they do. They see players at a young age that have got potential to build.
Great age.
And 18 is a great age in football terms. And you're absolutely right. And it builds into what he is trying to build at Newcastle. And to see him come through in 18 to have 4 goals and 4 assists in his first real breakout season at Ends, that is, for me, that's positive. That's great. People, I'll be honest, I've not seen anything other than the YouTube clips that have been going around. And to be fair, I watched them a while back, because at least a month ago, maybe 2.
It was about 2 or 3 months, actually.
Yeah, he actually mentioned that he wants to come to Newcastle when the links were talked about. I think he was asked the question. He said he wanted to come to Newcastle. So I'd watched those clips way back when, and he looked an interesting talent. He looked an intriguing talent, and seeing what he can give potentially in a couple of years to Newcastle, because he's going to go on loan. Of course he is. They've already mentioned it. He has the potential to be what Brighton have brought through. You look at Matoma, and you look at Casado, and you look at Esteban as a left back. You look at some of those other players that they've brought through. He's got the potential to be that type of player. Like, he's destined to be a real super talent. And I'll be honest with you, and I don't say this lightly, he looks like he's ahead of Garang Kual. Like, in terms of the way in which he plays, he looks like he's already ahead in terms of what he's capable of producing. He plays games. He's starting more games. He's producing more moments. Like, there's an argument that he's ready. What I will say is, left-footed on the right-hand side, from what I watched on the videos, and I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are, and you probably will watch similar videos, he does remind me a little bit of Miggy, in terms of the way in which he presses, in terms of the way in which he moves the ball, his in and out movement, like in terms of making those runs in and behind. He seems that similar type of player. I could be wrong, but that's kind of what he says to me. That doesn't mean that he's only got one foot, although I've only ever seen him use his left foot, but he's got that ability to bend that ball into the far corner, which is gold dust.
Yeah, I think the negative things that I'd seen about him was the fact, obviously, how much they've paid for him. I don't know if people are just compare it to the fact that how much they paid for Garang Kual, which was literally next to nothing. But also the fact that there was a few people saying it's the same position as Garang Kual. Well, I'm not being funny. What happens? You might have 2 that make it. You might have none that make it. Yeah. Or you might have one or the other. You've got to keep your options open, especially when you're looking at you've spent €6.5 million on 2 players potential.
Yeah,
you know, it does. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, no, and you can. There's resale value again, even if they don't eventually cut it. They're so young that you could sell them on and at least try recoup your money back.
It's the Chelsea model, though, isn't it? It's the Chelsea model.
It is. Exactly what it is. But I know all about Minty, Richie, because I watched the 5-minute Dennis Wise YouTube clip on him today, so I know all about him.
Too.
But Pete, actually, I must point out first of all, Sean Casey in the Irish Mags chat, he did say last night there was going to be something dropping today about a young player, and I saw there was another tweet from January. Some guy did mention this player, Minty. So that was a very, very interesting. But for me, go on.
I was just to add to that before you move on. I didn't see it last night, so I apologize, Sean. But he did message me and he mentioned something. He did say the young player was going to be announced today. So when I saw that, I was like, Fucking hell! Like, you guys saw the Fabrizio Romano before me because I was still in bed. I apologize, I was still sleeping. so I missed the early announcement by about half an hour or so. And then when I went back to the messages, I saw that he'd messaged me last night and he said, "Keep an eye out for." And I was like,
young player, and he also had that he was go straight out and loan as well. But anyway, like I said, man, himself. So yeah, he got that one right. But I was going to say, when the clips I saw of him, and I said it into the Irish Mags chat as well, he just, some bit of him just reminded me a bit of Tino, the way he was running as well. I got a bit of a Tino flavor off him. So bring on the fireworks. Look forward to that.
Too right.
Yeah, I think the good thing is though, what we're noticing is that we're actually looking into the young market now. We're not just looking at home. We're not just looking at Brazil. We're looking worldwide. You know, we've got Koala that was in Australia, the A League. You've now got Minty, that's from Denmark. So there's a lot of different potential. It's good to see that we're opening up the network full stop, and we're not just restricting ourselves. And I think this is what we're going to see more of. A lot more development in the academy side of things as well, like Man City have done, like Chelsea have done as well. But I was thinking, Daz, before we get on to the questions, because that's, round up a little bit about Minty. Do you want to mention the sponsors and stuff before we get into the questions?
Yeah, let's do that, guys. 23 question starter. You guys do, because I've just only caught up to the chat. But yeah, a shout out to the RadiatorShed.com and Russ and the Radio Shed. And Russ is still mad busy on the Radiator front. And yeah, here's some of the samples of what are on offer. I just flicked quickly through the pictures because you've all seen them at this stage. And talk to Russ; he'll sort you out. Mention Loaded, you'll get a discount.
They were samples, by the way. I got how much for the music? I was like, why are they so small? People are like, they're samples. I'm like, oh, that's why.
Oh, that's why. Now I get it as well. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. He's got a new custom flavor one coming as well. Right. So and store works as well. Russ's company, if you want to get things set up, you come in the Loaded van and sort you out. Also, a shout out to H2O Bathroom Design Co., the Northeast's largest supplier of Velcro and Botch bathroomware. Team Valley Gateshead, over 20 years established, run by the family. Get down to the showroom on 11th Avenue, Team Valley Estate, Gateshead. And yeah, here are some of the pictures of the lovely, beautiful bathrooms. And I think you were even go making some moves in that market there yesterday, Richie.
I'm not. I must admit, it's not me. It is the in-laws are looking to get something done. So Russ has happily said he'll give them a ring on Monday when he's back at work.
Nice one. I hope they're going to mention Loaded and they'll get that Loaded discount.
They will. I'm sure they will.
No Christmas dinner for you otherwise. Let me see. That's it from the sponsors.
Right, well, let's crack on with the questions for the next half an hour or so, and we'll see where it takes us.
Okay, we'll leave some for a rapid fire round as well. We'll have a rapid fire 60 seconds at the end. Question: Tierney and Madison are Bakker and Dominic Szoboszlai. Second one for me.
It's a tough one.
We're going to wait for the left back series to complete first before we answer that question on left backs. Because we've got a few. Obviously, the first one in the series went out, Borna Souza, today. So if you haven't checked it out, make sure you do. There it is on cue. And maybe the other two are part of the conversation. We will see.
Maybe they are, and considering they're up on YouTube, we can mention them.
Okay.
So they are. I think Michael's been having a sneak peek at what we've got coming up. I think that's what he's been doing there.
Dropping tomorrow at 9 a.m. We have Gonna Be Starting Something. Kieran Tierney. That's who we're going to look at tomorrow. Then dropping on that's Saturday morning. Sunday morning, we've got Biker. Barker Grove. So yeah, that's coming up on Gets cheesier and cheesier this show. Yeah, that's coming up on Sunday morning, and we're just after recording the next one, but we're not going to say who it is yet because it's not up on YouTube. So stay tuned for that one. So back to the question.
I've got to say, Daz, I did actually give you a shout out on one of the shorts because some of the posters that you come up with and the puns, seriously, you could be an editor in a bloody paper for some of the stuff that you come up with. But I tell you what, the Viva Las Vegas one for Gabby that we did the other day, you don't need to. You can just message Toon Chance straight away and tell them to get Elvis on the case. Viva Las Vegas. Viva Gabby Vega. There you go, son.
Exactly.
Don't need to mess about with a long chat. Nice short one. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. You can't beat the short ones, the catchy ones. But yeah, are we answering this or are we leaving it?
Honestly, I think with what we've got planned coming up, I think we need to. I don't think we can answer that. Let's leave it for the let's leave it for the shorts. Let's leave it for the shorts.
Okay.
Sorry, Michael. The shorts will answer those questions for sure.
Right. This is a question for both of you lads. Right. Which one of the loaded lads would be the most useful to be stranded on a desert island alongside?
Tough one.
Well, if there are quizzes,
I actually saw.
I'm not the guy to be with.
Neither am I.
With a quiz. So if it's quiz related, I'm out.
Keith Rowan's your man there.
It's a weird because I saw Lisa's response to this, and Lisa came up with a good one, and it probably started swinging. She says she's adamant that Daz could. There you go. Daz could build some kind of communication device to get out of wooden shells to get us off the island.
Yeah, but probably be shells saying SOS. That'd be my device I'd have to build. Lisa, yeah, you're not giving me much options there. And probably if I walk around the island, I'd probably, if I met you again, I probably wouldn't recognize you. So there you go. That'll keep it interesting.
That's true. That's true.
Goldfish. Right, next question. Let's go to Column's question. With the recent reports about Benfica dropping out of the race for Milos Kerber, would you prefer him or Kieran Tierney? I don't know who this guy is. I've never seen him. I don't think I have, haven't I?
It was who Sean mentioned on the show. He said that scouts have been watching a young lad at AZ Alkmaar, and it's Milos Kerkez. So he was destined because Alex Grimaldo has been going is leaving Benfica. So he's gone. I can't remember who he's gone to now. He signed a pre-contract agreement with someone else on a free transfer. So they were looking at Milos Kerkez as a replacement. Apparently Newcastle have been watching him for quite a while. Milos Kerkez, Hungarian. Just putting it out there. 19 years old, young left back, had a really good season at AZ Alkmaar. Still lots of improvement to be done. He's still a really, it was a great age, 19, but still lots of improvement to be done. But I just think that, it's one of those that I think Callum is looking at. Callum was right. Alex Grimaldo is going to Leverkusen this summer. So that means Kerkez is one that we've been looking at basically, and it's one of them that we're it's one to keep an eye on. But whether it means that we get him ahead of Kieran Tierney, I mean, in terms of quality and what they've produced, Kieran Tierney's already shown his ability over the years. But Kerkez is a young player that's got room to maneuver and room to grow. All depends on what the ownership and the manager is looking for.
I think for me, I'd probably be swayed slightly towards Tierney, mainly due to the Premier League experience and stuff like that. Whereas, he can come in straight away and do it and start from the first game of the season. Whereas with Kerkez, is he a similar sort of purchase to what Harrison Ashby is, where he's going to be somebody who needs to be developed under someone to give him a bit more of a chance to get up to speed, what Eddie Howe wants to play and stuff like that. there's a need now with the Champions League football. I think you need to improve on what you've got. If you were to buy him, I think you'd still need to buy another left back. If you had those both come in, you'd probably be swayed with something like Matt Target leaving or something like that. But for me, out of those two, if it was given one or the other, it would probably be Tierney.
Okay, let's move on. Question from Callum: with Chelsea going for Ugarte and Caicedo, and Liverpool looking at Kone and Kefren Turam, who would you lads like us to get in the middle of the park? We've touched on a bit of this in one of our shorts.
I think, do you know what? I just want to obviously go back to the second part of that question where it says Liverpool looking at Kone and Turam. Do you think that they'll go for both? Because obviously we discussed this briefly in the chat the other day. However, there's also the rumours that it looks as though McAllister's going to be their first side this summer. So would they still go for both of them with McAllister going in as well?
No.
So it's interesting on that one. But I don't know. What do you reckon, Pete?
Honestly, I think Liverpool will sign probably 3 midfielders this summer. We talked about in the chat about Kone and Kefren Turam, and I think you weren't maybe sure about whether they would sign both. Their midfield is finished. Like, James Milner's gone on a free.
Brighton.
He's gone to Brighton. Oxlade-Chamberlain's been released on a free. Another centre midfielder. They've been playing Harvey Elliott in midfield most of the season, which tells you all you need to know. They've got the young lad who broke through, that I think has got a bad injury. He might be out until beyond the start of the season. So Fabinho has been poor this season, just gone. He's had an awful season. A lot of Liverpool fans are really questioning whether he's got a future at the club. So they need a rebirth in that midfield. Jordan Henderson is obviously, 32, 33, moving on. In terms of age-wise, his productivity has not been great. They need a brand new midfield, and they've needed it for a few years now. So it would not surprise me if they go out and get McAllister, if they go out and get Kone, if they go out and get Kefren Turam. Now, all that depends on how quickly they can get those deals done and who else is involved. Now, if we're involved, Besetic, Callum, spot on as always. Kefren Turam for me is the big one, because we've been linked with him since October time, and we won't be the only team that are linked with him. I would say if we're linked with him, the likes of Man United and one or two others are linked with him, Liverpool are down the bottom of the pecking order, and the reason being is because of that. We can offer more money in transfer fee. We can offer more money in wages. That will be the big kicker in terms of whether he goes to Liverpool or not. I think Kone, will go. Like, if Liverpool are genuinely interested in him. I just think that, there's a lot of things to play out there, but could they get all 3? Definitely. I genuinely think, because they need to revamp their midfield. I hope they don't, but I hope they get 1 out of the 3, because I think them not strengthening their midfield could be the difference between us staying ahead of them next season. I genuinely think that. Their attacking line is strong. Their defensive line will and can get better. They've got Alisson that saved their ass so many times last season. Their midfield is the key. And our midfield at the moment is better than theirs. Hopefully it stays that way next season. But I don't know what you guys think.
Throw Rice in there. I know all the talk is about he's going to go to Arsenal and blah blah blah, and we won't be there for the wages. But you never know. You never know how it'll all play out. There's a lot of midfielders there in that mix. Shall be interesting to see how it plays out.
Do you know what? I'll tell you who else is. Obviously, you're asking for an alternative. This is someone who's been at Newcastle before. What about go back for Mikel Merino? Because he was fantastic at one season that we had him before he went. Obviously, we got him from Dortmund. Rafa didn't want him to leave at all, but obviously there was a release clause in his contract that Sociedad met. So I think there's been whispers a few times over the last couple of years. Obviously they're in the Champions League as well, same pot as Newcastle. is it? He always said he felt like he's had unfinished business. Newcastle, would that be someone that Newcastle could potentially look to go back for if other players went, to different places?
100%. If anyone's followed Isaac and Real Sociedad, they're very good friends. And Isaac spoke to Mikel Merino before he came to Newcastle. So could that deal happen? 100%. The only problem I would say is the transfer fee. He is now a Spanish international. We're not talking 5 million, loan fee with a view to buy or whatever it was that we ended up buying him for. He had a £10 million release clause that he went to Sociedad with, which is an absolute steal for what they got him for. It was a disgrace.
Yeah, it was.
They got him for €10 million. I think it was euro. Was it euros? Was it pounds?
I think we paid, was it 10 million for 10 million euros, and I think we sold it for something, was it 16 or something? There was no way it should have only just been.
You might be right, Richie. I swear I don't think it was that one. I always thought it was about like 10 million pounds or 10 million euros that we had a buyout clause for him for. Regardless of what it was a disgrace that we sold him for that amount of money. He was and still is a quality player. And the problem is that we would have to pay considerably a lot more to get him out of Real Sociedad to bring him to Newcastle. Could he deliver? Of course, he is a quality player. He has everything. He can play number 6, number 8, score goals, links the play, great with the ball.
Right, that links
man. I'm excited. Let's get the shorts.
He's got 2 years on his contract, Pete.
What's that?
He's got 2 years left on his contract.
I'm just thinking about shorts.
Yeah. Add them to the list. This list gets longer every day. Next one from Leon. It's still
I'm excited, man. I'm excited.
Take the brandy off, Pete. Take it off, Pete. Do you think we're looking for a proper defensive midfielder or looking for another hybrid who can play number 8 and number 6 to interchange with Bruno?
Do you know what? Mourinho's the perfect that. It's another hybrid. Could do a 6. Could do the 8.
So Kefren Turam.
Yeah,
do that too.
True. Very true. There's a lot of players that can do both the roles. I would throw out there Gabby Vega.
Yeah,
Vega as well. Yeah.
You can do both.
Yeah. We discussed the stats in the short. We compared their stats.
Yeah. Absolutely right. There's a lot of players out there that we're looking at, by the way, that can do both in that role. Yano's put on there in Wilfred Ndidi. 2 years ago, I would have said, "Tell me where to sign about Wilfred Ndidi." Now, with what I've seen of him this season, not a chance. That guy's finished. And I don't say that. But that guy's finished.
Yeah. Stay tuned because there will be a quick fire question round at the end.
I've just thought of someone else. We've discussed it so much recently. Obviously, I know there's other people that've got first say on him, but you look at Romeo Lavia at Southampton. We discussed him before as a potential option. Is that 6 and Michael Pomar, another fantastic shout in the chat there. Tyler Adams. We know that. Well. Yeah, we know that Eddie Howe likes leaders. He's the captain of he's one of the vice captain or captain one at Leeds, and also for the US national team as well.
There's another one, and to be fair, there's a few links coming out today from the Man City side of things that Man City would be willing to sell Calvin Phillips, and Newcastle apparently interested in him. Nothing come from obviously from our side. But Callum's is quite rightly said. Calvin Phillips, again, another option. Can do a bit of both.
For me, only at a real knockdown price, that one. Just dodgy.
If anyone watched the True Faith live show or listened to it, a number of the Newcastle United journalists, including I think it might be Luke Edwards, mentioned Onana at Everton.
I like Onana.
What's the name?
Apparently, well, I say apparently, we all know they're skint, they've got no money, and they will need to sell a little bit like they did with Richarlison last summer. They need to sell one of their big names in order to generate some money in order to be able to sign again, because let's face it, they're still skint. They've got no money. They've got a stadium to pay for. It's nearly ready. They're in a difficult position there. So Onana, who can also apply a 6 and an 8, another one to add to the list.
I'll tell you another. I've just thought another one as well. Is this all we discussed a few months ago? That's Phil Billings at Bournemouth.
Yeah. He's decent.
I got pelters for this when I said it, particularly on the Joyous Down South chat. I like him as a player.
Yeah, I do.
I think he's a good player. Like, is he Champions League ready? No. And that might be the big thing why people don't really consider him. He's not Champions League ready. He's not that type of player. But I thought he gave so much to Bournemouth last season. I think he was a big reason why they stayed up, personally.
Does he strengthen the squad?
Of course, he's
exactly.
He strengthens the squad massively, but it all depends what you consider or what we consider strengthening the squad is. If we're strengthening the squad with getting a Mikel Merino or a Kev from Turan and a Sean Longstaff or a Joe Willock is moving to the bench, that is also strengthening the squad because you're bringing in a player that's becoming first choice. And those players that have been amazing for us this season and then playing a bench role or fighting for their position. So it kind of like, it all depends on what Eddie Howe wants.
Yeah, it's also about financial fair play, as in like what we've got a certain amount we can spend, and we move things around, the jigsaw around to see if we get our top signing here, we might have to go for someone lower down the list here just to make it all piece together. So, let's move on. Let's go to this one next. From 9 goals, what do you make of us being second favourites at 11-2 for the league on Paddy Power? Do you guys think we can actually challenge City? I'll go first. No, I don't. I think we'll be in around top 4 again, but with the season ahead, it's a season of learning, European competition, trying to compete in all domestic fronts. We'd be lucky to get in the top 4 again, because we excelled this season. We finished ahead of where we thought we'd be, and we are going to improve because of that. But it's going to be tough to emulate it again.
I don't see it. I don't. I'd love it. I love it. I love it. If we were to challenge Man City, that's for sure. But I just don't see it right now. However, what I will say to you, I didn't see us getting above 8th in the league.
Yeah, me neither.
It's not a season. I had us between 10th and 8th, and I was rubbing my hands together as if to say, I'd be buzzing with that. We end up finishing 4th. So who knows? The one thing I'll say is that the way the Premier League finished this season is not the way in which it will finish next season. You've got teams that will rise. I genuinely think Chelsea will rise and be better than they were last season. I genuinely think Liverpool will be better than they were last season. That doesn't mean to say that Newcastle won't be better than we were last season. And what I will say is teams like Spurs, Brighton, and Villa have got it all to do. They've got it all to do.
Villa are going to be one to watch. I think they're my one to watch next season.
They have, but equally, the pressure's on them. They're expected to do well now. They weren't expected to do well back when we smacked them 4-0 at St. James's Park, and they've done well. It's all up in the air. Anything's possible. Anything's possible.
That's it. It's like we mentioned. You talk about this. We said. I think might have actually we briefly discussed it. One of the shorts that you could do over the next few days. There's potentially up to 8 to 10 teams that could be in and around the way that things are developed. But you've also got to look at them. Spurs have pretty much depended on Harry Kane for a long time now. It all depends on obviously.
He stays, Richie.
So he's got to stay. Who's the manager going to be? They haven't got a clue. The same
from Celtic.
Postecoglou from Celtic.
Yeah, that guy.
Which isn't really going to there's a lot of people going, "Oh, I'm not really happy about that" and stuff like that. But it is what it is. That's where Spurs are at the moment. You look at Brighton. Can they keep hold of all these stars? Obviously, we know that McAllister looks like he's on his way out.
Yeah.
Casado could be on his way out. And there's going to be people who are looking at Matome, Enciso, Estepinian. There's loads of people that
Ferguson.
They're not under any pressure to sell. Don't get me wrong, but these are people that players will be clubs will be looking to buy. So they've got the pressure of what is the recruitment side of things where they've got to bring in people to replace the people who are going out, and are they going to kick on like the ones have now? So then obviously also there's the point that Johnny Tuvalais made in the chat. Next season, there's 5 places for the Champions League as well. It's not 4, it's 5 because it goes into the league system.
Yeah.
We were going to briefly touch on it because obviously there's the whole structure changes from the season after. However, we've got to get there first. Let's get this year to the dustbin first before we get into talking about it in 12 months. But there's a lot of pundits on TalkSport have turned around and said that they could really see Newcastle pushing Man City next year. So there's positives of that. For me, I think Newcastle are a bit like how Arsenal this season were a bit like Arsenal were last year. Hopefully they can learn from the mistakes and build on it. So for me, if you look at second or third, you might not go the distance, a bit like how Arsenal have it, they fell away. That might be something Newcastle do, second or third, and fall away. That's another learning curve. You add more strength and you build again. So there's plenty of options on it.
I wouldn't. As Pete said about 8th, that's where I said 8th or higher this season, and I was surprised and everything when they got higher then. So set yourself a realistic target in your head and then enjoy it. If you finish higher than that, all the better. Because you might set yourself up for disappointment if you think they're going to win the league or come second or something like that.
One thing I'll say is that we lost the same amount of games as Man City this season, but the draws is the big thing that let us down. The draws. Now you go back to Bournemouth at home, Crystal Palace, where we should have won, and that Tyreek Mitchell goal that should have stood, we didn't. Bournemouth, to be fair, with the amount of chances we had, I think the Isak threw on goal early on, and he tried to lob the keeper, and it didn't work. That goal would have won us the game potentially. You go back to the Leeds New Year's Eve, I think, where Short Longstaff had about 6 chances to score and he didn't. You've got the Bournemouth away, you've got the Palace away. We dominated possession, never really looked like losing apart from that big save at the end from Nick Pope. West Ham at home, the Callum Wilson throw on goal and the Aguerd tackle. You go through all of these games and these draws that we had, you turn them into wins. It's a title tilt. There's no doubt about it. So I'm not saying that we're going to lose the same amount of games next season. What I'm saying is that there is room to move on and progress. What I'm saying is I don't know if Arsenal are going to stay in this position next season. I don't know if Man United are going to stay in this position next season. They could go up or down. The only guarantee we've got in those top 10 positions that you talked about, Richie, is that Man City are going to be fighting for the title. That's the only guarantee that you can put on any of those top teams, that they are the team to beat. Unless
Premier League get their act together and they get relegated to the Championship or somewhere like that. Then, apart from that, no, they're definitely one of the upside challenges. Right, let's move on. I'm skipping some of the questions to keep for the rapid fire round, but go to hear from Yano. When we're talking about the keepers, he asked about he said he would like a second choice keeper who can challenge Pope. So would I. Someone in another one that could challenge Pope, and all just depends what is going to happen with Dubravka and Karius. But and any thoughts on a keeper, lads? We don't talk of that's for someone to challenge Pope, not a third choice.
I don't think it's really until we've actually found out what's happening with ours. I don't think it's something that we've really looked at.
Yeah.
To be fair, I would say that the one keeper that you look at as possibly number 2 would be an upgrade on what we've got. I know we've discussed it before. Not currently playing well. He started the season, but didn't finish it. You look at Robert Sanchez at Brighton. Yeah. He'd be a fantastic number 2. Obviously, everyone likes David Raya, but he's going to want first team football if he was to move on from Brentford. They've just signed a new keeper that for 11 million from, I think, from somewhere in Holland. But obviously, there's rumours that Raya's going to be going to somewhere like Spurs or Man United, so he's not going to come and sit and be Pope's number 2. But it's a difficult one. It's a really hard thing to do because obviously, when you've got a goalkeeper, there's only one position playing on the pitch week in, week out, and you've got to be obviously sell it to come in, be look, you're going to be number 2. It's like look at West Ham. West Ham, they've got Areola as their number 2. He was at PSG before that, you know what I mean? Then obviously Donnarumma came in, and then you obviously had Buffon around him as well. So they had a fantastic number 2. You've got to be come in. It's a hard job to do, to come in and know that you're sitting on the bench week in, week out, with the opportunity to potentially challenge number 1. It's a really, really difficult thing to do. So I have to see.
From what the Athletic put out there, Newcastle in talks in extending Karius's contract. Which if that's the case, it makes you think that he's going to be number 2 next season, which means that it could well be that Martin Dubravka moves on. Now, I have to say, Martin Dubravka, watching him at Stamford Bridge, I thought he was brilliant. I really did. It doesn't mean that he's always going to be brilliant. He's had bad games. He might desperately want to go out and play first team football, which is absolutely fine. But Karius might be that number 2 that might be happy to play on the bench and sit on the bench. Daz, I know you put in the chat about his missus not wanting to stay north, and that's a question of conversation. There's other players. Callum's again coming with other players, other goalkeepers. Robert Sanchez that you boys have mentioned. Good goalkeeper, very, very good goalkeeper. Surprised that he's actually not getting in front of Steele at Brighton, but Steele is better with the ball, which is probably the reason why. Alban Lafont is another goalkeeper, a young goalkeeper that's hugely talented, come from Nantes, and he is another consideration. But have we not considered the fact that David De Gea is likely to go on a free? And Raya is likely to replace him because that's who he wants. Would you take David De Gea as
all my years
number 1? That's the question that I'm going to ask to you right now. David De Gea or Nick Pope? David De Gea with the most clean sheets this season, or Nick Pope, who has been a revelation for Newcastle? Who would you want at Newcastle if that was the question that was put to you? Callum's coming with a no, and I'm assuming that's the whole conversation. But boys, what do you think?
Yeah, I want Pope all day long. I don't want David De Gea. For years, I've been complaining about David De Gea and how he messes up so many times. Okay, at times he's unreal as well. But the concentration goes, no, I don't want him. No, I don't want a Man United cast off. No way. Those days are gone.
What are you thinking?
No, I've got to agree with Daz. There's no way I would have De Gea. You look at the season with Nick Pope, and yes, he had that glaring mistake at the howler against Liverpool. But at the end of the day, that's probably 1-2 really bad mistakes at Pope. How many's De Gea done season in, season out? Whether he's, that's the problem. You don't look at. He's just a nightmare. How he's got, and this is one of the contentious decisions where he's got the Golden Glove because he had the most clean sheets, right? But for me, surely the Golden Glove, it shouldn't be how many clean sheets you've got. It should be who's conceded the less goals this season. Because you look at De Gea, they conceded 7 against Liverpool. For me, it's not about clean sheets. It should be about how many goals you concede over the season. Which, if that was the case, you've got Edison and you've got Nick Pope, who would join top on that one. So for me, that's a fair. That should be the better way to judge a goalkeeper, because obviously it's how many you concede rather than how many clean sheets you've got. Because the clean sheets, it could be all down to how your defenders have played as well. So it's, you know what I mean. But that Pope all day.
I agree. I'm just. I was.
Devil's advocate.
We know.
I was being Chris Hall. I was being devil's advocate. Let's throw that out there for you. So interesting. But David De Gea is likely to be a free transfer this summer because a lot of talking from Man United sections is that he's not likely to be given a new contract. David Raya has always been an identified target to be signed at Man United. Chelsea are also looking at him as well. So are Tottenham for the reasons that Richie mentioned, because Hugo Lloris is going to be leaving. Chelsea are looking to build a new goalkeeper at that level. So be interesting. But yeah, go for it. Other questions, boys?
Okay, one last one. So before we go to a quick fire one, and I haven't heard this guy's name either, but maybe you guys have. Bobby asks, have you heard of this guy here on screen, whose name's mentioned, from Montpellier? He's been linked in the newspapers over here. Great talent, 20 years old, 17 goals this season. No.
I've heard his name mentioned, but I don't know a lot about him, if I'm honest. I think he's been linked with other clubs. But
hey, he's got a good name.
You know what?
Why I, man?
Yeah.
Do you know what?
Sign him.
Look, Pete, save the question. Let's ask Lee when he's on.
Yeah.
I was going to say that is a question for Lee, 100%, because
yeah.
I don't really know any. I've not seen too much about him from Montpellier, but Lee will know a little bit about him. So let's go for it. Let's add that one to the list.
Add on to the list. Yeah. Right. Are you ready for the rapid fire, quick fire round? I've got. We might run over on that. Sorry. Here we go. 1, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. So first question is. How much wood can a woodchucker chuck?
Oh,
what is this?
Oh, come on! I need answers. Come on. That's passed. Okay, Michael Palmer. Since it's Pride Month, who is the hottest NUFC player?
he's gonna get banned from the. You know what? You've got to turn around and say Fabian Shaw, because all the women like him, don't they?
There we go. Unanimous. Jason Scott, Daz, can you play the Champions League music? Yes, I can, Jason. Next question is, what's the ticket situation going to be for the Champions League away? Too long to answer it, Chris.
Nightmare. A nightmare. What I will say is that European teams have passport or identification that you're needed to get a ticket to get into the stadium. So if you're looking for a ticket, that's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to be.
Okay, we didn't get through half them. We have to do it again. We're going to have to do it again. Richie, let's kick off. Hang on. How much? We need 2 minutes. So we need 120 seconds. Next question is: if you could go back in time and trade the Champions League adventure for the League Cup win, would you take it?
No. I'd keep the I always said that Champions League would progress the club further. We'll win trophies down the line in the next few years anyway. Champions League progress. The project gets better people coming in. There you go.
Right, moving on. Mark Todd asks, would you be happy getting conference place next year with the additional competition we'll be embedding in new players? Pete?
No. Minimum Europa League. We need to progress further than that.
Richie? Comes from Neil. Speculation on Osman today. Any news?
Not that I know of. I know he has been mentioned again. We discussed it yesterday in our WhatsApp chat, Gazzetta dello Sport. However, they reckon that Napoli are after, I think it's 130 million euros for it. Don't get us wrong, we all love him on this channel, but are Newcastle really going to spend that on one player this window?
I will add to that, and I know the time is out. I don't rate Gazzetta dello Sport, but I did speak to Lee about that, and he says normally they're a good source. So.
Don't worry, Pete, because we've got another one. Because we've got more questions going. So this has gone to 180 seconds countdown. Here we go again. Let's go. Okay. Okay, from Callum. Question: do you trust Amiobi to get these loan moves right?
No.
MTV Cribs, you'll be fame. Okay, move on. Let's go from John Noble. Would you swap ASM for Diaby?
Hell yes.
Richie?
Hell yes.
Pete, Michael Palmer asks, question: would you sell Wilson if you got a bid of 30 million or more for him?
Yeah, I would.
Richie, question: Kyle Walker-Peters as a backup for Trippier?
Hell yes.
Hell yes.
Come on. And appropriately didn't say yes.
Pete, Mark Cordes, would you be
We've had
happy
that
getting
one.
Oh, we had that one. Now, where's this one? Yes, this one. Do the under 21s and 23 players get trained the same way as the first team? So when it gets called up, you know what I mean.
Any good quality team has the same process and the same style of play built from the under 20s all the way through to the first team. Barcelona were renowned for it in that tiki-taka football. Real Madrid the same, Man United the same. If you're going to build a player to come into the first team and be ready, you build and make them play the same type of football.
And I'm going to play this for Jason as we're talking in the background as well. So yeah, that was it. That was a quick fire round, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. So yeah, more of those to come. We got 3 quick fire rounds there. That's enough of that, Jason. But we did play it for you. Yeah, that is it. Richie, hand back to you to sign off for the night.
Look, all we can say is that, look, we really appreciate that you've decided to join us. Still over 150 in the chat live on a Friday night. You know, you could be out in a beer garden somewhere, but you've decided to join us on a Friday night at home. So, look, fantastic you all decided to join us. Much appreciated. So, you know, the only way I can actually end the show is, like Callum said, hell yeah!
Hell yeah. Loads of shows coming up as well, Richie. Must say, but we'll get you to do another hell yeah. Yeah, so plenty of shorts coming up, as you said, 9 a.m. Over the next 3 mornings, and there'll be other shorts dropping. We'll be back next week with another fully loaded transfer show. We also have to come with Squad Game. Squad Game is coming next week. We just have to pick a day to run it, so keep an eye on that as well. So, Richie, give us another hell yeah.
Hell yeah!
Good night, everyone. See you later.
How you like?